data sets and understand them to tell a story that helps us be more sound in our decision making, right? So within that decision making, to make sound decisions, we have to understand the data. We have to be confident in that data. We have to be confident in the way that we crunched it, and we use a little bit of our gut, right? I've been in the workforce for 18, 19 years now. I've worked in manufacturing, I've worked in supply chain, I've worked in software as a service, I've worked in straight sales orgs. I've never come across anybody in the workplace that has said, boy, all of this Excel knowledge I have is really useless. Like, never, right? The only thing that I've ever heard is, I wish I understood how to use Excel to do this, or I wish I understood how to do a VLOOKUP, or I wish I could understand how to make pivot tables, because if I could pivot this thing out, I could have conclusions at my fingertips a lot quicker, right? So there are many things that I learned in school that I do not apply in my day-to-day, to be completely honest, right? But when it comes to Excel, all I wish, and a lot of other people I've come across to in the workplace, is that I wish I knew more about Excel. And if I don't know more about Excel, I just got to be really good friends with Adam Eagle so he can help me with Excel in our day-to-day. If you know Excel, if you truly know Excel and you know how to utilize it, you will be an asset no matter what department you are in. Some departments more than others, right? In finance, most folks have a very good understanding of Excel, and they're going to use it. And a lot of people are going to utilize those skills in the day-to-day, and it's kind of going to be like a norm. But if you're in, the sales department or the ops department, if you have more knowledge of Excel and you can crunch data quicker and you can make better decisions because of how you understand that data, you're going to be valued, not only in your department, but by other team members also.
And Luke, I'll add into that, whenever we say being able to crunch data in Excel, we're not really talking about complicated formulas. I think that one of the biggest problems with Excel is that it can do everything. We don't always need it to be able to do everything. Sometimes we just need to know how to put a filter on a data set and sum up a column, and that gives us the answer. That we need. Or, as Luke alluded to, and what we'll get to in module 4 with pivot tables, just being able to throw stuff in a pivot table and it give you that quick answer. So Excel is, I consider myself intermediate to advanced, but I also know that there are so many things in Excel that I've never even thought to look at before, and never even had to consider before. So I would argue that the part of the issue with current people getting in there and using Excel is that they say, well, there's no way that I'm ever going to learn it all. 100% correct. You're never going to learn it all. But there are a couple of quick little things, nested if statements, VLOOKUPs, and pivot tables. If you know those 3 metrics, then you can do 95% of the stuff that you need to do in Excel until you get into Dr. Tarpey's level of some of the analysis that he was talking about.
I think something else to mention here too is, like, we use Excel, so much, and we operate out of basically 3 or 4 main systems in our day-to-day, right? But we are always exporting our data out of those systems with a CSV file, and then being able to organize that data through Excel, right? And the last organization I was at, they had a lot of the greatest. They had Tableau, right? They had Snowflake. They had Snowflake talking to Tableau, right? And they had all these great BI tools that would send you these reports every morning that were supposed to give you insights into your business. The problem that comes with that sometimes is that the folks that are writing those reports or writing those SQLs to pull that intelligence and put it in front of the folks that are supposed to use it to come up with actionable items to move the business forward. The folks that are writing those, they often don't understand the business to know if that report's right or not. And when you pull out data and you transfer that data across different systems, there's always a chance for something to err, right? For there to be an issue. And those reports would come to us in those fancy BI tools. And it was without fail that the sales team would look at those reports and they'd be like, those numbers are off. That's not right. And then we'd end up going back to the source, pulling it in a straight CSV file. And because we knew a little bit about Excel, enough to be dangerous enough, we would slice that report up and then send it back to the ivory tower and say, hey, your BI reports aren't right here, and this data is wrong. So even for the ability just to understand what's being put in front of you and to check, you can be really dangerous with just knowing a little bit about Excel. But like I said, it can just, it just helps so much for you to know a little bit, because you're going to get such large data sets no matter where you were at. But to be able to make those simple, and pull insights out of them, Excel is just, it's the tool to absolutely try to learn about, because you will use it no matter what industry, no matter what job you go into.
Luke, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but a slight defense of the business intelligence departments that exist out there. What Luke said is 100% accurate. But what I would say in reverse is that there's been many times that I've had conversations with Luke and I say, hey, look at this cool data that I pulled together and look at this trend that it tells us. And he looks at it and says, okay, sure, yeah, that's cool, but have you thought about looking at it like this? And then I say, well, oh crap, no, I didn't think about that, but that makes perfect sense. So if you as the end user of that Tableau report, of that BI report, can go to the person that created the BI report and say, hey, it looks like this is wrong, or it looks like we might need to adjust this. Or if you could say, hey, here's the visual that I want to see. Can you put this into the report? Then that allows you to be the person who is requesting the data versus you just being the consumer of the data. Ultimately, the information that Luke is getting from the CSV versus the chart that you're getting in Power BI is still based off of the same data. It's just based off of how that data is aggregated and analyzed. So if you can tell the person who's writing the dashboard, hey, this is what I want to see in the Excel language, if that BI person is worth their salt, they'll be able to translate that into that BI tool so that it'll be replicatable, reusable on a daily basis. And what I will say is that can be one of the limitations of Excel, is that if the data is if the underlying data of the analysis is constantly changing, you have to continually update the underlying data. But if you can understand the base cause and then go from there, it allows you to have benefits move forward. Some of the things I was thinking about talking about is templates and calculators within Excel. But Dr. Tarpey might have that saved for a later time.
Well, and let me interject there. And Adam and Luke, you're welcome to join all 4 sessions if you want. I'll get you the links if you want to help teach this, because you guys certainly on a daily basis are using these techniques. For the students out there, I want you to understand why we have Adam and Luke here. So it's one thing for me to tell you, yeah, companies use Excel. HCA used Excel. United Airlines, where I worked for a number of years prior to HCA, uses Excel. I think there's a lot of value in hearing from individuals from the industry now that are currently in jobs that use Excel. Luke, in the leadership role that he's in, looking at employees who are to hire, of what kind of Excel skills. And I'm going to ask Luke and Adam a question in a minute about that. But I want you to understand that Those of you who are in management major, supply chain major, we try as professors to give you those applied skills such as Excel, such as PowerPoint, such as the ability to present, those type of things, so that you can go out into a new job and have those skills and be able to hit the ground running. So you're very fortunate to be in the programs you're in that has very applied learning. I can speak for the supply chain colleagues I have, and I think I can speak for the management colleagues as well. We try to work those particular types of skills into our courses so that you have those as we talk with our industry partners, our valued industry partners, such as Silo and the others, to think about what do students need when they graduate for an entry-level job, right? So undergraduates, most of the time, are going out looking for an entry-level job. They may have some work experience, but not a great deal in depth of the career they've chosen or the career they've pursued at the academic level. So one question I want to ask Luke and Adam to steer us in one particular direction, and I apologize if this takes you kind of off your presentation of what you were going to talk about, but Luke, I'll start with you, and Adam certainly weigh in. When you look at an entry-level candidate, and I don't recall, Luke, if you guys were in the hiring mode right now or going to be in the hiring mode. It seems like every company who's a trusted partner with us has told me, hey, we're hiring right now, or we're going to be hiring shortly down the road, right? So if you could tell the students just a little bit about what would your expectation be in regards to Excel skills coming out of the university level of MTSU?
Yeah, it would depend by position, right? But we are hiring. We will be hiring for the remainder of 2022. We had an MTSU grad start with us in January.
Yes,
she's been an immediate value add player in our organization. But it depends across positions. But it is now kind of standard whether you're coming in as into a sales organization, an operations organization, finance org. And obviously, finance, it's going to be more, but a basic functionality and ability to get around Microsoft Office is critical for your day-to-day, right? So even at the most basic level, you need to understand how to use Outlook. You need to understand how to use Word. You need to understand how to use PowerPoint. You need to understand how to use Excel, right? And if you've mastered some of those skills and you're a little bit more advanced, like I said, you're going to be of value quicker to your organization, right? The other thing that you should, if you have a chance to, and y'all do this in your kind of groups or across classes, is understand SharePoint. We talk to a lot of our customers through shared Excel sheets. So I think a basic understanding, Dr. Tarpey, right? But the more advanced you are, the more you are going to add value, quicker in your career.
Great. Adam, anything to offer on that?
Yeah, it's essentially what Luke just said. I know that it can sound trivial, but one of the biggest things that we do right now for one of our largest shippers is we put together, as Luke said, a shared Excel sheet, and I'm not sure if this is sponsored by Microsoft, but you can replace Excel with Google Sheets in most of these conversations that we're talking about. But we have a four-man's TMS that we manage via an Excel sheet with one of our largest partners. And this is well, Luke, you know how big they are. But this is a very large shipper that allows us to do that. And some of the simple things that we're doing is just color coding the data to make it easily visible. Anything that we need their attention to pop out for it. We could get a whole lot more advanced in the way that we bring attention to those things, but just color coding cells, boxing cells, putting everything in a neat and clean format within Excel allows us to service this partner in that manner.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Sorry, let me interject real quick. I'm glad you brought that up, Adam, because one thing that I try to teach in these sessions, as well as in my classes, there's different levels of spreadsheet. You can have a spreadsheet out there that you send to somebody, And then you could have a clean, well-presented spreadsheet, right? So what Adam's referring to, that if you're trying to make a point with a spreadsheet, your spreadsheet needs to tell the story. It can't be 100 rows of unformatted data necessarily, right? If there's something important in the spreadsheet, we use formatting techniques, whether it be conditional formatting or manual formatting, to highlight what that spreadsheet is trying to tell, the story it's trying to tell, right? We sort things in proper orders, we subtotal things correctly. And we're going to cover a lot of that in these sessions of how you would do that type of work when you analyze data. But Adam, I'm glad you touched on that, because a lot of students, well, I've got a spreadsheet, it's 200 rows, I'm done. But it doesn't tell a story, right? There's nothing there. Now, in assignments, many times, we ask for a narrative, right? So you're doing an analysis and you're presenting a narrative in a Word document that goes along with your supporting evidence of Excel. Doesn't always work that way in the industry, the practitioner world. So many times you're just doing that Excel spreadsheet. Someone said, hey, I need a report, right? That report has to tell the story. You don't get the opportunity to do a 3-page paper to talk about what your point is. And many times you don't get the opportunity to go and verbally talk to that person, such as Adam said, the CEO wants this. You don't get to go up and say, hey, let me tell you about this. He or she is expecting an Excel spreadsheet that tells the story that he asked to answer the question that he asked, right? So forgive me, Adam and Luke, I wanted to interject that in there, try to provide some color for the students as to how it relates to what they're experiencing in their classes. So Luke, I think I interrupted you.
No, you're all good. I think that to your point, right, you want to make it presentable. You also want to make, you'll get to a level where you want to make the spreadsheet, so that it can be interactive, right? So there's different inputs for different scenarios that allows your audience to put in to see the changes that happen, right? We see this a lot in modeling. We see this a lot in projections. We see this a lot in employee headcount and looking at hiring forward, right? We also see this when we communicate with our customers and our partners. You have X amount of shipments. What does that mean? If you input this in here, that means Y, right? And letting them in these collaborative sheets take a look at that and see different scenarios without us having to present a sheet for every different scenario, right? So you can become a lot more efficient in your communication through the use of understanding Excel at a greater level. I know our 30 minutes is almost up here, but I will say that as far as the communication with customers go, we were just contracted with one, Fortune 50 company that's multi-billion dollars. We were just awarded another project with a company that is over $1 billion. And through both of the onboarding and both of the communications with these partners about these projects that are going to span anywhere from 12 months to 5 years, every single interaction has been with the use of an Excel sheet for all of our planning. Nice. It has all been with Excel sheets. Like we're literally going back and forth with the Fortune 50 company on trying to get our team members access to their SharePoint so that we can get in and use their shared Excel sheets. Nice. So it doesn't matter how large of an organization you're going to work for, how large of an organization you're going to partner with. Like, this will always be a skill that you will be able to utilize and will be valued across the organization.
Nice. So students, SharePoint, if you don't know, Microsoft's version of OneDrive, well, also OneDrive, but Dropbox, Google Docs. Hopefully you're using some of these tools when you have group assignments in some of your classes so that you can share your work and collaborate accordingly. They're all collaboration tools that, to Luke's point, you need to know when you get to jobs, because today it's all collaboration, right? The days of you just working on a project yourself are for the most part over. There may be some now that you still do on your own, but there's a lot of collaboration these days, and many times collaboration across regional boundaries. Since after COVID-19, companies are not all in the same office anymore, right? A lot of work from home, a lot of work in different places, especially if you're with a large organization that's either multinational, you're working with people in different countries, sharing files and all. So I dare to say, if you know how to use one of them, you can figure out any of them, right? It's just they're common skills that you can apply across the different types of file sharing software. Okay, I just want to interject that again. And Luke, we can run a little bit over your 30 minutes. Don't worry about that. I don't want to cut your content at all, because again, I think there's a lot of value for our students hearing this information. from you and Adam.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the only other thing I had left was just kind of going across our organization in each department and how they use it, right? Just to show the reach of Excel and how it knows no kind of boundaries, if you will, right?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Yeah, sure.
So we're a smaller organization, right? We're like, we started however long Adam's been here, 20 months ago, 22, because Adam was with us from day one, even like negative number day one, because he was helping us do some of the planning before the organization opened the doors. But we, so we have, I think we're up to 46 people right now. Does that sound right, Adam? 46, 47
I
people,
think
something
that's
like
right.
that? Yeah,
Let
we're
me
getting
pull
close
up
to
my
40.
Excel sheet that has our directory on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Our contact sheet is an Excel sheet. Yeah, absolutely. So, or if we want to get it, we go into Gusto, which is our payroll service, and we export CSV files out of that to talk to QuickBooks or talk to our shared Google Drive. So the finance department, right? They use Excel all the time, right? Whether it's our balance sheet, it's our profit and loss sheet, it's pulling payroll out of our HR system, Gusto, to talk to QuickBooks, right? We do all of our projection modeling. We're not as advanced as some companies. Like I said, we're a smaller organization. We do all of our projection modeling out of Excel, right? We just hired a director of finance not too long ago whose Excel skills are fantastic. And I am shocked at the amount of models and situations we can look at just simply in Excel. So, finance is heavily based in Excel. From a sales perspective, right? Any individual contributor, they should be able to utilize Excel to do account analysis, right? What is my account doing this month? How does that compare to how they did last month, to last quarter, to last year, right? What is that percentage change in business? How much business is possible? What's the percentage of business that I have? What is going to be my next value add to that partner to see if I can expand my reach within their business, right? Our folks are always using Excel to look at those analysis, right? Our individual contributors also have to project for their book of business. All of those projections are done in an Excel sheet that Adam builds in the background, and then the individual reps put their inputs in, right? We want to get a better understanding of accounts on a day-to-day level, right? In our world, we want to understand what's that average revenue per shipment, right? What's that average profit per load? What is our GP percentage? All of that is done in Excel, right? We can try to understand it in our TMS, which is our transportation management system, but everybody has found it faster to be able to export that report out of a CSV, and then, a couple formulas, some sorting, and you've got your story right there, right? Our operations team uses it to help route shipments, right? They use it to help look at lane history, right? They use it to look at carrier utilization. How many times are they using a certain carrier on a certain lane? What's that average rate per mile, right? We have scorecards, or we are scorecarded sometimes by our partners, right? Many of those scorecards are simply shared via Excel documents. What was your on-time percentage, right? What was your on-time pick, your on-time delivery? How many times did you roll a shipment? What is your, percentage of shipments invoiced versus percentage of shipments still open, right? All of those scorecards are generally shared in an Excel sheet. We live in what we call a spot market world, which means that the prices are changing every single moment of every single day. So Adam is in the pricing department and works with our head of pricing to give the sales and ops team better insights into what's going on today in Dallas to Atlanta, meaning we're shipping something from Dallas to Atlanta. What is that price based on equipment type? Adam, how much do y'all use Excel in the pricing world?
Hourly?
Hourly seems light, right? It should be every minute. But yeah, it's used all the time, and Excel is going to be powering in the background a tool that we are currently building, to help our team get better insights on pricing. But it's all based on modeling that is done with Excel as the base. when we look at the different tools that we use for our pricing analysis, once again, to get the raw data, to be able to slice it the way we want to use it for our business, all of that is exported as CSV files that we then take and model out.
One thing they'll add to that. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head with all of that. In a previous life, I worked with 4PL, fourth party logistics. We had about $4 billion worth of freight under management, managed about 700 different clients. And whenever we were sending reports to our clients, those reports would come in Excel. It would have a cover page, Dr. Tarpey completely agreed. No one's going to read 3 pages, but 3 sentences should be enough to explain everything that you need to on the charts that exist in that data. But the stakeholder probably wants to be able to get in there and slice and dice it, which you can't do directly in a BI tool. So we're this small $50 million brokerage here in Nashville. We're working with Fortune 50 companies in the U.S. I used to work with a $4 billion a year transportation company. From smaller to us to larger than anyone that we'll ever work with, they all use Excel.
And that's good input, on both sides, right? So you're using it, they're using it. I can tell you that at HCA, which is a Fortune 100 company, when I went to hospitals to discuss hospitals' nurse productivity, it was all Excel spreadsheets, right? It was all what I call what if analysis, the ability to enter, modify the spreadsheets, get an answer right away based on the data, and then you just update your data. So modeling is what it's appropriately called these days. So again, it's the smaller companies, it's the medium companies, it's all the larger companies.
Yeah, it's a universal language between companies too.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so let me do this. Let me open the floor and see if anyone has a question for Luke or Adam. Excel, company related. We'll take any company, right, or any question right now if you have one. Turn yourself off mute if you do.
I had a quick question just where you guys were going through and talking about different departments. If you guys might know how like HR departments kind of utilize Excel in their operations.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. So I can think of a couple instances right off the bat. So our HR department leads every month and every quarter what we call an organizational staffing review, where we go through and we bring all of the people leaders into a room and we discuss how our individual folks are progressing. All of that data, all of those inputs, how we score, that is all done in an Excel spreadsheet, right? So that's one way. Our HR team also helps with, as Adam said, the contact sheet. It's done in an Excel spreadsheet. They also run our HR software, which is called Gusto. All of your time off is input in there. Anytime a manager wants to see a report on how much PTO, paid time off, any individual employee or department has utilized, that's exported out of Gusto in a CSV file, sorted and filtered, and then sent to that said manager to show them how much paid time off was taken. So those are just a couple of examples that, off the bat come to the top of my head.
Right.
Thank you.
That's great. Something that Luke said catches my mind. All the software we've talked about, whether it be Gusto, which I'm unfamiliar with, whether it be Lawson, which is kind of the healthcare market player in ERPs, or SAP for manufacturing, a telltale sign of the critical nature of Excel is every one of those software packages exports to Excel, right? So if that's true, then we must assume logically that Excel is kind of the common denominator, right? The common language of all software applications, data related. So all the BI tools you can export to Excel. Many of the BI tools, either Adam or Luke talked about, are even linked to Excel. Excel is the underlying data that is used produce the reports and produce the dashboards, as it were. Great question, Abby. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question? Okay. Great. So Luke, Adam, very helpful. Thank you very much. Again, we're very grateful for your donation of your time and your expertise to help support our students. Feel free to stay on. Again, if you have interest of how we're teaching this, and I certainly would be welcome to your input of how this is being taught and what skills we're teaching, feel free to stay on. If you do stay on, feel free to just jump right in. If I say something wrong or you think there's a better way to do it, by all means, don't be shy at all or bashful. You perfectly welcome to do so. Again, thank you very much for participating. I think it's a big help for our students. And for the students out there, Silo is one of our newer partners, our industry partners, and they have jumped on. They've been on our mock interview event last week. They've committed to being at our supply chain summit on March 22nd, where we're going to have, I don't even know how many companies yet. I think I'm somewhere around 16 confirmed companies going to be on campus talking to students and talking to each other about various roundtable topics, one of which is going to be internships and hiring, which may interest you as a student. So look forward to that information. You'll see information around campus about that event. So Luke has been very generous with his company's time and some of the folks at his company's time to help us provide you this knowledge and information. So again, Luke, we're very appreciative of your support.
We appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I've never heard anybody say I have too much Excel knowledge. I think that's hard. So I do have to jump off and see my little ones before they go to sleep, but I appreciate y'all listening to us. And if y'all ever have any questions, I'm Luke Kilko. You can find me on LinkedIn, Adam the same. We're here to partner and help in any way. All right.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Y'all take care.
Dr. Tarpey, I am going to put myself on mute and stay on here, but one last story
Sure.
from my side. The reason that I'm in logistics right now, to begin with, the reason that I'm sitting here right now, I went to an interview for a sales job, and the person sitting across the table from me 5 minutes into the interview said, "You'd be terrible at the sales job, but what do you think about data analytics?" And I said, well, you know, he said, "Do you know pivot tables and VLOOKUPs?" And I said, well, yeah, I've done a pivot table and a VLOOKUP in the past, and walked out of the job interview with a job offer. So fast forward 6 years, here I am. I completely truthful, I lied whenever I said that I knew pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, but I learned on the job. I learned quickly, and 6-7 years later, it's a daily thing. So I believe you said that that's not until module 4, but you know, whenever y'all get to that, that'll definitely help you get your foot in the door whenever you have those interviews. Never put that you're an Excel expert on your resume. It's a lie. Go with intermediate at most, because you're always going to find someone smarter than you. But that's my last 2 cents.
I like that. That's great advice. Intermediate is good. I like to say proficient. Again, proficient, you need to be proficient, right? So Adam may not have got away with that in today's time frame versus 6 years ago. So I could tell you stories from 12 years ago and 15 years ago, but that won't help anybody here.
Love it.
You can't fake it. You've got to know it in today's world. There's so much competition right now. Definitely had been. Now, since the pandemic, of course, there's less competition for jobs. There's a ton of jobs out there, students. If you are in your junior, senior year and you don't have your resume ready and you haven't started thinking about jobs and haven't participated in Ignite events outside of this one, you're not a member of an organization such as the Supply Chain Student Management Organization or the other organizations we have on campus, where you have the opportunity to network with industry leaders and industry hiring managers, you're missing out. You need to get involved. You need to, I know a lot of you work and you take your classes, but you've got to carve out time and take advantage of these opportunities to speak with these industry folks. So we've had several of our industry folks from Dollar General, from Bridgestone, I'm trying to think of the others, MAPCO, who have come right out and say, "Hey, you know what? I remembered this person from this event at MTSU, and they came across my desk with a resume and an interview, and they got the job because they remembered them, right? Once you build those relationships, those last. And I'll be honest with you, I've been around a long time. I've been working well over 30 years between major companies, and the days of you handing a resume into a company and getting a job, those days are pretty much over, right? You've all heard the stories of the resume gets screened by some artificial intelligence tool and it drops things out. Not all companies use those, but I can guarantee you that every job right now, not maybe a little less so today, but we'll go back to the days of every job out there is going to get 50 to 100 resumes. And that means somebody has to go through those, and somebody's going to look through. To a certain point, a resume will come across and say, hey, you need to look at this one. This was how you got a job at HCA, right? It wasn't through HR. Someone came through and said, hey, Yasmina, you need to look at this resume because I know this person, or I know a friend of a person, whatever the case may be. You cannot overvalue relationships and networking in today's world. That's how jobs are obtained. Okay, so get out there, network, take advantage. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to say, of the 46 people that we have, all but save one or two of them was a connection that we made either through our industry or through events at MTSU. There are, I think only one or two people in our organization that our first interaction with them was their resume.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're at MTSU. I think, we're very proud of the relationships we have with our local industry partners. And our goal, the Jones College of Business goal is to help you guys get jobs. We educate you, but we also, as part of that, those set of goals is to help you get out there and get you employed, right? Because that's why you're getting a degree. You're not getting a degree for fun. Most of you, maybe someone is, I don't know. Most of you are hoping to get a job. So I'll get off my soapbox and I will move on. That was a plug for our departments, our programs, our Ignite events, and all those things that are out there for you guys as students. All right, so let's move into some Excel, shall we? Since that's what we're supposed to be talking about. All right, so again, you may find this a little repetitive, perhaps a little boring from this point forward if you've used Excel and you know Excel, but I really have no way out of 29 participants who's done what in Excel. So we're going to cover very basics tonight. So hang with me. After tonight, we'll start getting into more advanced functions in our next session. And I neglected to actually look up when that next session is. So check your Ignite calendars. It's listed in there. All 4 Ignite sessions are in there. I can send an email out to everyone. I think I will send an email out to everyone after this session, and I'll give you the dates of the 4 sessions. Let me make a quick note on that. All right, so there's a lot of versions of Excel out there, folks. I'm going to share my screen. What do I want to do here? I'll just do those. I didn't want to go there, but I've got a particular data set called up right now. And I just want to look at Excel in general. So there are a lot of versions of Excel. So the latest version of Excel from Microsoft is 2019 / the other version that's latest is Excel 365. Okay. The 2 versions are mostly similar. 365 as part of Office 365 is basically under a different licensing model. So you're basically renting that one. You're not purchasing it. In the past, you purchased Office products. You paid, I don't even know what's up to anymore, $390, and you got the basic applications, right? You got Excel, you got Outlook, you got Word, you got PowerPoint, you got Microsoft Access, and that's probably it. Maybe you got SharePoint, I don't know. In those days, you purchased the whole thing, it's yours. The downside to that option, of course, is, Microsoft, every 2 or 3 years, they're going to issue a new version. And if you want the new version, oh yeah, it's $180 to upgrade, right? Because that's Microsoft's model. That's how they make money. That's why their stock is so high right now. They make money. That's what they do. Now, the Office 365 is the first software from Microsoft, or at least Office software from Microsoft, that's come out on what's called the subscription model. So you're basically paying an annual fee. I forgot what it is right now, to be honest with you. I think it's somewhere around maybe $199, maybe $99. I don't know, but you're paying an annual fee for the use of Office 365. You get a few more software applications. The concept is you get every update. right? So if they're going to update something and they do 2 or 3 major updates a year, have been, I can't say they're going to do that in the future, but you get the value of those updates right away. You don't have to wait till they come out with a whole new version, and you don't have to pay more money. You're just paying every year. It's smart, right? Those of you who you are all business students, that's very smart, because I now have captured you to pay me yearly versus just one time and I never see you again. Now I've got you locked in. You're going to pay me every year. So in the long run, I'm going to get more money out of you. That's how companies work. That's how Microsoft works, software companies. So there are different versions out there. I have Office 2019 pulled up right now. The functionality is for the most part the same. Office 365 has a little more functionality that's been introduced. Obviously, it's not in Office 2019 because they haven't upgraded. They haven't come out with their new version yet. I've heard the next update is going to be 2022. I don't know. You know, Microsoft, I haven't kept up with it really. Now, I want to throw out there, you may be using Excel 2017. And I think the one before that was 2013, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was 16 and 13. It's not really relevant. There's been multiple versions of Excel. As you go further back, you have less functionality, right? So you don't have all the formulas. You don't have all the charts and graphs. I forgot when we use this a lot in the supply chain program. We use histograms and we use Pareto charts. Well, that was only introduced, I think, in 2013. So when students come and they're using Office 2009, they don't have those options, right? So they have to do manual Pareto charts. So every time a new version comes out, Microsoft adds new functionality. That's the way it works. And now, as either Adam or Luke said, now it's very complex. The tool's complex. You can do all kinds of things with Excel. And every year it gets to be more and more. The row limitation used to be fairly low. It was somewhere around 256,000 rows. Now it's much higher than that. I don't even know what it's over 1 million. I think you could technically have a spreadsheet with that many rows. However, your computer might choke on it if you don't have a good computer. Or if you try to do a pivot table, your computer may not be able to handle it. That's how big the files are getting now. All right, so with that being said, the general layout, I'm going to show you 2019. What I'm not going to show you tonight, for a couple reasons, is the Mac version of Excel. Now, those of you that have had me as a professor, you know my thoughts about Apple, and I'm not going to reiterate those here. I'm not an Apple person. However, it's a wonderful company. They make a lot of money. I own their stock. It's great. However, the Mac version of Excel is limited, right? I've had a lot of students in my classes where they've had to do charts and graphs, and they've come to me at 10 o'clock at night and say, I can't figure out how to do this in Mac. Well, that's because the Mac version doesn't do that, right? It's not as robust as the Microsoft version. So I'm not saying that to dissuade you from using your Mac computers. By all means, if you're a Mac person, that's the way you're going to go. I can tell you that in some of the classes, as you get into your junior, senior elective levels, you may have to use the MTSU virtual application option to be able to get access to a Microsoft version of Excel so that you can do the more complicated functions. And that you can find out by asking your professor. Usually the professors will tell you up front if you need to do that or need to consider that. I believe all the functions I'm going to cover in these 4 classes in this series can be done either in the Mac or in Microsoft. I don't remember hearing any issues last year when I did this, although we're going to cover a little different stuff this year. All right, so those of you that are new to Excel, it's pretty simple. It looks like any other Microsoft tool. You've got your tabs at the top. You've got your ribbon with all your more detailed commands. In this case, you have a general spreadsheet, right? A general spreadsheet for data. You've got workbooks at the bottom where you can have different spreadsheets with different data. You can link these together. We'll talk about that later on, not tonight. All right, so again, I've got this spreadsheet pulled up. Let me move my Zoom stuff here. This is a fairly substantial spreadsheet. We're looking at 10,128 rows of data. We're going to use this spreadsheet in these 4 sessions to do some data analysis. But for tonight, we're going to just talk about the data. So we have different types of data. Every column with data in it, if you right click on the column and hit Format Cells, you'll get the Format Cells pop-up box, and the blue highlight is going to tell you what the format of the cell currently is. In this case, it's a general format. That means it has no format. It's just whatever. So you're asking yourselves probably, well, this says client number. That's not a client number, right? That's a scientific notation for a number. If you remember back to your high school days, when you use scientific notation, or perhaps your chemistry days here at MTSU. Now you can't see this whole, let me cancel that for a moment. So when you get a spreadsheet of data, your columns may be too narrow to see your data. The way to fix that is go to the top, the ABC, your header. If you get your cursor right till you have the double arrows and double click, it will expand the row as far as the data requires. Now, alternatively, you can just left click, hold down and grab and do whatever you want. But if you want the column to be expanded just to the largest or the longest amount of data, you can double click it and it'll automatically do that. You can pick a bunch of rows and double click, and it'll do that for all the rows that you have selected, or columns. I'm so sorry, columns. All right, so you can get your data to where you can actually see it. Now you'll notice that we have numbers. Just by nature of expanding this column, Excel has said, okay, I have numbers. If I make it too narrow, Excel is saying I can't display the number. So I'm going to give you a different notation that I can explain. As you can see, this notation is very unhelpful for you. So typically when we have data sets, the first thing we want to do is we want to look at our data sets and get it into a format that we can understand. So we're going to double click there. If I were to right click on my B column and hit Format Cells, again, we have general. I wonder if all these are general because it's imported data. I bet they are, because that's where I want to start with. So when we look at general data, it basically has no format. So let me look at, we see that customer age should be a numeric format, right? The way we change formats, again, right click on the column, go to Format Cells, and you can pick what you want this format to be. All right, so if I pick number, whoops, if I pick number, Excel is going to ask me, do you want decimal places? Yes or no? Well, age, decimal places in this particular context doesn't make any sense. There could be a context where the decimal value of a year would be important, not in this case. So I'm going to remove those decimals and just say, I want it to be a number. You can pick how you display negatives, whether it has the negative in front of it, whether the negative numbers are represented in a red font, or whether you have your parentheses or parentheses and red font. Those are all very applicable when you're doing financial spreadsheets, obviously. You can choose whether you want your 1000 separator. That wouldn't make much sense in age, obviously. So let's just make this a number. You don't see any change because it was already a numerical format on import. Okay, so let's see if we have some data here where it will make a difference. I got to keep moving this thing around here. Let's see here. Here we go, credit limit. So this basically, I should have told you this. This is a spreadsheet about bank accounts. More specific, credit card accounts, okay? So these are customers who have a number, whether they're existing or not. You can see this column in N says credit limit. So these are credit card accounts. So credit limit is typically a dollar amount. So we can format our cells. We can say currency, whether we want decimal places or not. In this case, a lot of times, unless we're dealing with large numbers, we go ahead and have our 2 decimal currency. We can, perhaps you're not working in the United States. When I was with HCA, we did a lot of work. HCA has 6 hospitals in the United Kingdom. Well, obviously we did a lot of spreadsheets that weren't dollars. We did spreadsheets in pounds, English pounds, which if you go down here, because we have, Excel has every single currency known to mankind. I'm not going to do this. Here's the euro. You could eventually find the English pound here, but I'm not going to do that right now. For our purposes, we're in the United States. Let's go ahead and say we want dollars, right? And again, you can take those cents off if they're not applicable in the context you're working on. You can do multiple columns. So both of these are currencies. You just highlight your 2 columns, do the same thing. Let's make those currencies. We'll get them to match right now. Be consistent. Then we look at total amount change from quarter four to quarter one. So 1.3, that feels like a percentage, doesn't it? It's a total amount change. Let's take our format cells. Let's see what happens if we make that a percentage. All right, so there we've got a percentage now. The total amount change was 133.50%. Right, so we can see customers, whether they're increasing or decreasing their balances. All right, so we can do a lot of other things here. We have another ratio over here that may be applicable to remain in a decimal versus a percentage. But at the end of the day, you get the idea of changing your formats of the content of your cells. You can have dates, times. I'm going to go into a little more detail on date and times in our next session, because date and times can be particularly nasty when you're dealing with that type of data type. Right, you can add dates, you can subtract dates, you can add time and subtract time, but it can be nasty sometimes. So we're going to cover that in our second session. Scientific notation, you can have just text, you can have special. There's some predefined. If you have zip codes, you can define it into a zip code format, a zip code +4. You can do automatic phone numbers. You can do, oddly enough, in business, we rarely use this anymore, but social security numbers. If a business is using social security numbers as an identifier, most don't anymore, but maybe you're in HR and you do need social security numbers because it's for IRS purposes. Most companies in the early 2000s got rid of using social security number as an identifier number, but not all. And then you've got customs. You can make up your own. Right? You can make up your own. So in this case, anything in this field will be a day and a 3-digit month. Or if it's a time, you got all kinds of time formats. Let's go up here. In this case, everything will be a decimal with 2 decimal points. And then you've got some complicated ones here that are defaults. It's going to be a number. You're going to have a parenthesis with a colon. You're going to separate things with colons. And then you can actually make up your own in Excel. We'll cover that later on. We won't cover that tonight. All right, so does anybody have any questions about formatting data? Simple formatting of data. We good? Lovely. Okay. All right, so we talked about expanding columns. The same is true for rows. In this case, we don't have any. Let's say we did, I don't think I have any. Okay, let's say for display purposes, let's say we want to get all this data on one screen without scrolling to the right. So let's say I went ahead and did this. And let's say I maybe made this smaller. I can make all these smaller, certainly. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. This is a fairly, we can make that smaller. We can make that smaller. All right, so you get the idea. I'm not going to get it quite all, but you get the idea. Let me get that down there. All right, so if I've done that, what I've done is I've cut off data again, right? Now, when you do that and you have numbers physically change their format, you really can't do that. You've got to make that column at least as long as the number to make it legible. In this case, if you have, especially with text, if you need your column to be narrower, you can wrap that text. Okay, so let's do that. So let's, again, let me move my zoom down to the bottom or on the side. You've got a couple options here. Excel has shortcuts in the ribbon for most everything, not everything. You can always get to all the functionality by right-clicking on a column, a cell, a row, the whole spreadsheet. If you go into format, you're going to get access to everything that Excel can do, basically from a formatting perspective. In this case, what we want to do is we want to go to alignment. We want to wrap that text. So we're going to hit OK. And you'll see we've wrapped our text. You can now see the text, but it's made all your rows wider, right? So then you can play with the spacing. Maybe you're okay with the 2, that's fine. If I look at high school, we're good, gender. But our headers are all truncated. To do a whole row, you can right click on the row, do a format cells, wrap text again. Now all your headers show up wrapped. But you can see at least the entire header, right? Using underscores between headers is really not a general good practice because it does what you see on the screen. Right? So I don't necessarily recommend using the underscores between words and headers, but a lot of times data exports that way. You can always change that. In this case, I would take this out, just make it a space. And you could do that across and get better headers if you were going to give this to somebody. But you'll want to put a space if you actually want to do. All right, so you get the idea. But now our rows are still pretty wide. They don't need to be this wide anymore, do they? Because I've changed the width of column B. What I can do is I can take all my rows. I can take multiple rows like I had indicated earlier, highlight them, double click, and it makes them only as wide as they need to be. In this case, as tall as they need to be. Wide is probably inappropriate. As tall as they need to be, right? Well, I got 10,000 rows. That's no good. Well, let me just click up here and highlight everything. The corner left. Now I just did the entire spreadsheet for 10,000 rows. Okay. Alternatively, what you would need to do if you didn't do it that particular way, you would have to highlight all 10,000 rows, which you can do. You can scroll down and keep your left mouse button held down, or you can go down just a little bit, highlight a couple rows, let go of the left mouse button, scroll all the way down to the end, get to the last row, hold your shift key down while you left click, and it will highlight everything to the row that you were on. And then you can apply your formatting. So that's handy, perhaps not for 10,000. Let's say you had to do 50 rows. You could scroll all the way down. You could just highlight a few, go right down to row 50, hold my shift key down, left click, and I've now highlighted 50 rows. Same works for columns. If you have a spreadsheet that's particularly wide, maybe 100 columns, you may not want to work with all the columns. So you have that ability to scroll either physically through all of them or use the shortcut with the shift key. Can be very helpful. All right, let's see here. Let's go back up to the top. Make sure I haven't missed anything that I wanted to cover. We talked about text. We talked about numbers. Let's talk about some other types of very easy formatting before we get into complicated formatting later on. So typically, if we have a header row, we probably want that header row to stand out somehow, right? So I'm not going to fix all these, but in this particular case, we probably want this to stand out a little bit. So you can highlight any data within Excel, and up in the ribbon, you'll see these shortcuts, which should look familiar to you if you use Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. So let me just bold all those, right? Okay, now I can tell that's pretty much a header row because it's bolded. Many times we'll do things such as perhaps we'll change the background color. That's right here with the fill color. Perhaps I'll make that gray so that I know it's a header row. Again, just work with me, give me some latitude and assume that I fixed all these. I don't want to take all the time to do that right now. But I have a pretty decent header row now. Now I've got a spreadsheet of 10,000 rows. So what's going to happen when I page down? Now I have no idea what this 36 is, right? Now remember, this is just a spreadsheet of data. This is not a report. I wouldn't give a report of 10,000 rows necessarily. So now I've lost what any of this stuff is. So Excel has an option for that as well. You can go to your view at the tab or at the top, your view tab. There's a freeze pane command. If you click on that freeze pane, you have several options. You can do freeze panes. Keeps rows and columns visible while the rest of the worksheet scrolls. That means it's going to freeze the panes from wherever you have clicked last, wherever you're, we call that cell in focus, but basically wherever you have clicked, in this case, in Excel outlined in green right here. You could have the option just simply to say, okay, I just want to freeze the top row. I don't want to mess with the whole clicking. I'll get to that in a minute. Now you see when I page down, people can see what we're looking at, right? That's pretty important. if you have large data sets that you're working with multiple people on, or even yourself. Likewise, you could say, well, you know what, when I go over here, I see 22,352, but I've lost the client name or the client number, sorry. In that case, when we look at freeze panes, we can say freeze first column. Now we've lost our freeze at the top, but we do have our freeze for the column. You can see as I scroll to the right, I still got the column client number. Well, I need both. So what you would do there is you would click, if I click on B2, I think that's the right way. Let me go to freeze panes. That's the first option. Well, first I need to unfreeze. I need to unfreeze to get everything out. Now, if I click on B2 and do freeze, and if I hit just the freeze panes, not the top row and first column, now you can see both are frozen. See that? So if I scroll down, my headers are staying. If I scroll to the right, my client number stays. So you can do that anywhere in your spreadsheet, whatever the context is, whatever the need is. Makes large data sets a whole lot easier to read and deal with by freezing your header rows and your header columns. And then you can undo all that just simple with the unfreeze. All right, we covered, let's go back to our home. We covered filling backgrounds. So say you have something you want to highlight in a particular spreadsheet to show somebody and say, okay, well, this customer is an issue. I'm going to make them yellow, right? Typically, in a spreadsheet of 10,000 rows, we wouldn't do that. We set up conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is a way to use the data to determine what gets formatted. We're going to cover that in a subsequent session also. For instance, we will learn how to do any revolving balance over $2,000. I want to highlight in yellow because that's of concern for whatever project I'm working on. We can set up conditional formatting based on the data in column O. Anytime it's over $2,000, highlight this whole row yellow. Very helpful. That way it's called conditional formatting based on your data. We're going to cover that. All right, other formatting options. You obviously can change font. I don't recommend you use 10 different fonts in a spreadsheet. That can be somewhat problematic, not to mention irritating for the person who gets the spreadsheet. Keep your fonts consistent. Those of you that have had me in class know that nothing drives me nuts more than different fonts within a document, unless there's a valid reason, obviously. You can bold. I don't see a lot of underlying in Excel unless you're a financial application, such as doing an income sheet or a balance sheet or an income statement. Total somehow. The underline doesn't show real well. Let's get rid of this. However, if we printed, it would. And we'll get into printing and reports later on. And we'll talk about underlying and when it's necessary. Now, if you look at this particular report and I wanted to print it or this data set, you would never, ever, I wouldn't think, print a 10,000 row, heavens no, spreadsheet. But as you can see, when you do the print functionality, you basically just get the data and the background color. Right? You don't get the lines. These lines are not visible, these gray lines. If you want borders, is what they're called, then you've got to set up borders. We could click here, we go to our borders. You have all kinds of options. You can have just a bottom border, a top border. Let's start with all borders to see what that looks like. You'll see that now the lines are black. That means you're going to have black borders all everywhere. So if I do a print preview, right, that's a little easier to look at, to say the least, than if I had no borders whatsoever. It's all going to depend on the context of what you're doing as to whether you want borders or not. You can have bottom double border. You got all kinds of options that you can play with. We're not going to cover them all. You can play with them on yourself when you have time with your data. Thick outside borders. Let's say you want this row to really stand out. So I'm just going to take this row and I'm going to give it a thick outside border. And then hard to tell when you're looking at the data view, but if I look at the print view, certainly you'll see we have a darker outline. So you've got all kinds of options when it comes to borders. That'll become important when we talk about reports. All right, so I've covered all here. You can make your fonts larger and smaller. For instance, this particular row, I can either change the font size, or we've got these shortcuts to say, let's make it one shot bigger, another shot bigger, or I want to make it one click smaller. Those are the shortcuts, or you can just put in the number, whatever you want here. That's very useful for titles and other reasons why you would need to change the font. Let's talk about justification. Typically, when we look at these type of spreadsheets, we got stuff all over the place, right? We've got text typically is left justified as default in Excel. Numbers are typically right justified by default in Excel. So if I put in, look at any of these that are right justified, those are numbers. Sometimes that doesn't work very well. It makes for a poor looking spreadsheet. Let's take column E. One option we have is to center the data and the header. So in the ribbon at the top, we've got some options. If I highlight this column, I've got a left justify, align left in Microsoft speak, an align center, and align right. If I click align center, puts everything in the center of the cells. Right? That looks a lot more visually pleasing than necessarily having everything on the right. So I could take all my numbers, if they make sense, I can make them center. Typically, and these are all generalized rules. Currencies, we typically right justify. We don't necessarily center justify those in large spreadsheets. But again, it's going to be the context of what you're working on and the application that you're going to use the data for and what your report you want it to look like. For instance, I would take gender and say, well, that looks better if it were centered. I would take age and center it. The flag, I probably would not center. But again, it's personal preference and what you're trying to accomplish. Now, you also have the ability to center from a vertical perspective. Let's say I want all these to be centered vertically in the cell. Okay, now you see they're in the middle from a vertical perspective, or you can do the top, right? I don't recommend you get too colorful, or not colorful, too creative here. This just looks bizarre unless you have a specific purpose of why you would mix all these formats, right? Generally, from an Excel perspective, you want to be consistent, which would be true if you're creating a Word document, right? You're not going to use 4 different fonts in a Word document necessarily. You're not going to left justify 4 paragraphs and then center justify 3 paragraphs. I hope you wouldn't. So think about consistency as you're working with your data. Not necessarily important if you're doing analysis and you're not going to give the data to anybody. Then you need to worry about your formatting of what you're going to give somebody, right? So we're not going to give somebody a spreadsheet of 10,000 rows of data. We're going to analyze it through the next 3 sessions and produce something. So when you're working with a large data set, you really just need to worry about formatting so it makes sense to you, because you're going to be looking at this data a lot. So the formatting is not as important. I like to highlight the headers so that I can easily see what's what. And I like to freeze the pane so I can go through the data. All right, you've got some other options here. You can take, you can indent if you need to. Let's say I want to indent the existing customer, just like Microsoft Word. It's going to indent once or twice. We're talking about really specific applications now of why you would use that. But you have the ability. Sometimes, let me think if I can, let me think about what an application would be. Maybe let's think about adding a column. All right, so I want to add a column here. The way you add a column, right click on a column, hit the insert option in the pop-up box, and it inserts a column to the left. Defaults to the left. Other options you have, if you click a column, if you go to the ribbon, hit the insert cells, it's going to go to the left. Where's the option to insert what you want to do? Hold on, let me see here. I'll have to look at that. I thought there was a way to insert to the right. right, I'll come back to that. I'm gonna worry about that right now. So I want to take our time. We're at 7:21 already. I'll cover that as the opening. Inserting to the right. All right. So let's say we're going to add another column and we're going to call it, I don't know, customer rating. I'll just say customer rate. We can type our data in or import our data, whatever the case may be. We can justify it very quickly. Now, let's say you want to merge a couple cells. Now, you can't merge cells. You can merge cells with data in them. So if I were to go here and I say merge and center, you're going to get a pop-up warning. Merging cells only keeps the upper left value. So if I were to merge this, my 4 would go away. Whoa. Don't do the header. Sorry about that. So I'm going to merge all those cells and I'm going to have one cell with just the data of existing customer in it. Now that's not very applicable unless you had, let's say you have to have, let's insert a row here. Let's say you had a customer that has 2 cards. How about this? Let's copy a row. Select the row. You got a couple options. You can right click, you can do copy, or you can use the keyboard shortcuts, highlight your row and do Control C, highlight where you want to put. You can either right click and do paste, or you can do Control V and you've copied your data. Let's say this particular person has a gold and a blue card. And let's just say months on book. Let's say they just got the gold card, only 10 months. Let's just make a couple changes here. The relationship count will leave the same. Months in active, we'll just leave all this the same right now. The credit limit, though, it's a gold card. You kidding me? That's 25,000, right? Help if my number lock was on. All right, and you get the idea. Well, let's say since you have this customer, you don't want to have all the data replicated. You could take these 2 cells and merge them, and then perhaps center that. So now I know both of these rows are for client number 7688053883. Existing customer, well, that probably makes sense. That they're going to still be an existing customer. Customer rate may be different for the cards, who knows, but the age is probably the same. So you get the idea. You can merge cells so that you have non-replicated data across. Likewise, you can split cells. Let's say I have this cell, I can split it back into 2. There's various ways to do that. I'm running out of time to do that for you. Split format. Where's my split? Where have they moved split? Oh, where they move split. See, I wasn't ready for split, so I'm gonna have to do that one next time. You can split the cells back. Sorry about that. Where's my split? As you can see how often I split cells in my life. All right, we'll come back to splitting cells. But basically, you get the idea of how you can merge cells so that you don't have replicated data. All right, and that works out well anyway, because what I want to do is I want to leave some time, and I didn't leave much. But first and foremost, let me open the floor for some easy questions. Well, they don't have to be easy. I'll take all questions. Anybody have a question? Let me unmute yourself and go right ahead. Okay, so that tells me one of 2 things. Either you already knew all this information, or I just explained it so well that you get it.
I have a call out. Right up there where it says, tell me what you want to do, you might want to type in there so the students can see that.
Where are you referring to, Heather?
Right above the number on the ribbon, see where it has that little idea symbol? Keep going up, 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 to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Yeah, no, in the center. See the little light bulb?
Yep. Hold on, I can't see it because of my Zoom controls. There you go.
Yeah, if you tell it, maybe try split cells.
Oh, there we
I
go.
use-
Yeah,
I use that a lot.
that's great. Thank you, Heather. Absolutely.
No problem.
This is actually a more recent function of Excel. I don't know if it came out in 2016 or 2013, but that is a very handy function to type in what you want and have Excel handle it. Not perfect, obviously. I've had some unpredictable events, which leads me to some great advice that I'm going to give you. If you're working on an Excel data set, especially if it's a huge data set, always save versions of your data set, of your Excel. You can screw up a data set quickly. Right? I've known people in my practitioner career who accidentally did something goofy like this, highlighted a column and said, sort this data. You just changed the data for each row. You didn't sort everything. You only sorted this column. Now you'll notice there was a pop-up that came up to warn you. In the old days, you didn't get that. You used to just sort it. And so many people did that. Microsoft put that pop-up in there to say, hey, are you really sure you only want to sort this? Because it makes no sense to only sort this column. What you've done is you disassociated this piece of data with all the rows. Now, the last function I'll leave you with, if you do make some mistake, you've got the undo option, which is a critical option. Undo, go back. But as you're working on data sets, save them, save versions of them. So that if you ever do mess something up to the point where you can't recover, and let me be just perfectly clear here, when you have 100,000, 200,000 rows of data, Microsoft every now and then will have this funny thing of just stopping on you and ending and saying Microsoft Excel has to restart. And if you're lucky, you can recover your data when you restart. It doesn't always work, especially with large data sets. You end up getting one big, wondrous mess of nothing. So I always encourage students that if you're working on something for an hour, every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes, there's an auto save option in 2019 that'll automatically save so you can recover. Don't work on a spreadsheet for 4 hours only to have Microsoft die on you. And it's not a pretty death. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. I've had
Dr. Tarpey, there's
Yes.
usually cussing involved, at least on my side. So
cussing, I've actually had employees for me cry. Just cry. All right, Heather, that's fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions? Who else has a question? Now, bear with me. This might have been somewhat boring after Luke and Adam have finished their portion. I promise you in our next session, we're going to get to more meat of actually analyzing data and doing some of the upper level functions with formulas, VLOOKUPs, HLOOKUPs. We're going to get into charts and graphs. We're going to get into pivot tables. We're going to talk about doing conditional formatting. We're going to talk about reports. I'm going to cram all that into 3 more sessions. So it's going to be rather fast paced. And we're going to work with this data and analyze it. Okay, so with that being said, I realized that I covered a lot of that very quickly. You've got my name, Richard Tarpey. You can certainly email me in between. I highly encourage you to sign up for the other 3 Excel events through Ignite and go through the material that we're going to go through. And Adam, I'll send you the link, and Luke as well, in case you want to just listen in and participate and perhaps help. I'd be happy to have you to do so.
of course.
Great. So I will give Adam one more thank you very much for donating your time and your expertise. For everybody else, thank you very much. I appreciate you spending the time with me this evening and at least getting started, even though you probably knew most of this already. We'll get into more advanced functions in the next session. So thank you very much. It's 7:30. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you in the next session. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Dr. Tarpey.
You're most welcome.
Of course.
Thank you again.
You're welcome, Brittany.
See you guys next time.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, are you still there?
I'm still here, Yasmina. How are you?
Oh, I'm falling asleep over here.
Ouch, that hurts.
No, not because I'm tired. I'm just exhausted. I've
Well,
been
you
up
got,
at 3
you got-
o'clock this morning.
you got 2 jobs and you're in school, so you should be
I
tired.
know. I know, but I just want to say hi